Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about, of course, the economic challenges that the government is facing at this time. There are still no names as far as the cabinet is concerned. Of course, we've also seen the Prime Minister form an economic advisory council and have numerous meetings about the economy. The concern for economy and trying to stabilize the situation, of course, seems paramount as far as the new Prime Minister and his team is concerned. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking a little bit about overall the situation as far as the Governor Punjab is concerned, as far as administering oath is concerned. There are a lot of questions arising pursuant to that. We'll be talking about that. Also, overall, what is the likely scenario as far as portfolios likely to be given out to different political parties? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Salman Shah, who is also former advisor to Punjab government, also a senior economist. Thank you for joining us. We have with us Rana Ihsan Afzal Khan from the PMLN. Thank you for being with us. And Javed Jadoon, who is a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start off with Salman Saab. Overall, as far as the economy is concerned, as soon as this government, the Prime Minister took oath, we saw him, showing his concern for economy. Of course, we saw what happened as far as the depreciating rupee is concerned, rising dollar, inflation, all of those things. Overall, of course, the last government was also saying that they were stabilizing the economy, and there is, of course, this across dialogue that has been happening about what the economic situation was when the new government came in, the Prime Minister took oath, all of those things. What is your view on the economic situation at this time?
Well, MARUKH, I think he knows that Pakistan suffers from a few very big issues in the economy. And in my opinion, the biggest issue is our external debt. And the external debt is really beyond the capacity of this economy to service. So the first challenge which the new government will face is how do you refinance or roll over some of this external debt, which is becoming due all the time, and on a yearly basis around 12 to 15 billion dollars of external debt has to be refinanced. Because of the political uncertainty in Pakistan and the Ukraine crisis globally, credit default swaps for Pakistan are trading at a very high rate, which effectively means that your access to the international capital markets is no longer there. So to refinance this debt, you have to then go to bilateral relationships, ensure that somebody will pick up and give you the support to be able to do all of this. And this is going to be very acute in the next couple of weeks or months for the new government. The second biggest issue is the energy crisis. Pakistan's energy is heavily import dependent, and the fossil fuel imports of Pakistan are becoming enormous. And
Salman Saab, let me just come back to you. I'm going to go to Javed Jadoon and then I will come back to you and continue. Javed Saab, overall, how do you see the situation? We've had this discussion about the economic situation as far as the last government was concerned. There's a lot that was being said about how things were stabilizing. That was the narrative that was given out by the last government, Imran Khan's government. Overall, how do you see the situation now? And now that we've seen the new government come in, we've also seen the rising concern about economy. That seems to be the main issue at this time. Stabilizing rupee and, of course, we've seen, inflation, all of those things seem to be of the utmost concern to this government. What do you think the real situation was as far as the last government was concerned, and where are we, in your opinion, at this time?
Thank you very much, Marukh. I think what Dr. Salman was talking about, the economic issues, we know that they are embedded in the political instability in Pakistan. For the last several months, we have seen the kind of political instability which has wreaked havoc with the economy, and even our foreign policy has been questioned in so many ways. So we need to understand that why Pakistan is facing these challenges today. Of course, the outgoing government wasn't able to address the challenges the way it should have, but sort of pinning every responsibility on the outgoing government has been the trademark of every new government coming into power. Now, the coalition government is there, but ironically, after the passage of several days, the Prime Minister has not been able to form the new cabinet, because when we talk about the challenges, then we need to have the cabinet in place on fast-track basis, because it is the collective responsibility of the cabinet and the ministers, to respective ministries and ministers, to look after what is happening around as far as the challenges being faced by Pakistan is concerned. I think there are a certain amount of contentious issues between the coalition partners. That is why the cabinet is not in place, which should have been there. And secondly, now the Prime Minister has to focus on the economic challenges. But on the contrary, he is definitely looking over his shoulders as well, because there is a huge problem politically which is being posed by the outgoing Prime Minister Imran Khan. We have seen the kind of public he is drawing in his jalsas and his rallies. It is definitely a cause of concern for the Prime Minister. He won't be able to wholeheartedly focus on the issues which the country is being faced right now, because political challenges becoming formidable for the government, which is definitely, they'll have to find out a way how to deal with the Imran Khan phenomenon. Marukh.
Let me come back to you.
And unfortunately, the political stability is not there in Pakistan right now.
Let me come back to you. Rana Sahab, overall, as far as how impactful, in your opinion, is it as far as, of course, uncertainty is concerned on economy that we are seeing at this time, as far as the PTI is concerned? We are seeing the jalsas, the pace at which Imran Khan is addressing rallies, the jalsas are continuing. Do you think that it is having a negative impact, the uncertainty on economy? Overall, what is the situation? You're also part of the Economic Advisory Council that the Prime Minister has formed, as I understand.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The council has not yet been notified, but I'm part of the economic team, and I'm working with Mifta Saab these days. So yes, obviously the political uncertainty is always going to hurt the economic climate of the country, and that has been the case since the last 2-3 months. And some of the decisions that the previous government took, I think, were only taken because of political motivations or political plans, that maybe they thought they knew that there's a chance that they would leave the government, such as the reduction in the petroleum prices, and the fact that we don't have any fiscal space to do these things, or to for example, just in January there was a mini budget which was done so we could satisfy the requirements of IMF, and then just a month afterwards there was a industrial amnesty announced, and we saw a reduction in electricity prices and petroleum prices, where there were commitments made with the IMF that petroleum levy would be increased by 4 rupees and it would be taken to 30 rupees, till it was taken to 30 rupees. So, obviously, these political uncertainty has a major impact on the economic climate of the country. And let me say that whatever Salman Saab has said, I agree with it and I endorse it. So there is the external pressure, that you've seen the reserves of this country fall by almost $9 billion since August 2020.
The government at this time is also, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, he's also not going for the increase that has been suggested?
Well, I think we will have to review that. This was, the first. I mean, there's Ramzan as well, but these commitments. It was fixed for 4 months. We will be reviewing this stoppage of price increase. And obviously, as I've said before, that there is no fiscal space for this. And then you have made commitments to IMF, and we need the IMF program. It has to continue because, as Salman Saab has also said, that this can result into very expensive borrowing from international lenders, and so we need the IMF. So that certification is required, so we can go to the international market to borrow. So as I was saying that on the external side, 9 billion US has been depleted from your reserves since the last few months. And so that is one challenge. And then on the fiscal side, you see, we were expecting, they had budgeted a 4 trillion fiscal deficit. But we have come to know that it is going to touch almost 5,600 billion rupees. So that is a huge jump. It is 1,600 billion rupees on the fiscal side. An increase of such humongous amount is quite astonishing. And that is a huge challenge. So similarly, we've seen that the tax to GDP ratio has declined from 2018, where it was almost 11.1%. It has come down to 9%. So there are serious challenges. Then you have the public sector
enterprises. As far as the last government is concerned, and I will go to Salman Saab also on his comments on this, but they were also suggesting that as far as economy is concerned, the tax to GDP ratio overall, the situation was on the mend. And what is the real situation now? Even the figures being shared at this time between PTI and PMLN, there seems to be the reality seems to have been lost in the middle. Of course, there are internal, external factors both, but what was the real situation? That's my question.
Are you asking me or Salman Saab?
I'm asking you. I'll go to Salman Saab after this.
Well, the only figures that we can quote are the State Bank figures, and you will see that, or the Finance Ministry figures. So what for this year, I mean, obviously the figures which have been quoted previously and been released by the State Bank, we acknowledge those and we agree with them. But what I'm telling you right now is that the fiscal deficit, which was budgeted at 4 trillion, is going to be 5.6. It's heading that way. So this is a huge challenge in the coming days.
Salman Saab, you were also, advisor to last government. Overall, as far as were things on the mend, what was the situation? Of course, we saw the mini budget. We saw the challenges that they were, of course, even getting through the mini budget. That was also quite challenging as far as the opposition at that time was concerned. But overall, if you look at the economic situation, how would you rate things as they were left for this government?
No, I think unfortunately in Pakistan we have politics, they almost trump economics. I think that the economy was in a very dire straits. In any case, we all know that, even though it was growing at around 5.5%, but because of the pandemic and because of the disruption in supply chains and the Ukrainian war, we were hit by an external energy shock, which was very intense and which really disturbed almost all our calculations. And during that same period, you have seen a change of government. And also the government was in an IMF program. And prior to the no confidence move, the politics of the country was that we should blame all the hardship of the IMF program on the government. And as a result, the government also got destabilized. And unfortunately, the next government has a very difficult task at its hands, because if they go to the IMF program, if they expect that they will get some relief from the IMF, it's not possible, because the minimum requirement which IMF will place is that your exchange rate will continue to be market-based. Your interest rates will be positive, real interest rates, which means that they have to be above inflation. And number three, they would want a primary surplus. So primary surplus basically means that your expenditures have to be met through your taxes, more or less, and even something left over for meeting your debt servicing. So I think there is no room for relief in this, all of this, and I would think, I hope the government is able to manage all of this thing, and everybody should really support it in this fashion, that these tough decisions which the government will have to make are important for Pakistan.
Right.
So we
Let me come
cannot
back to you.
have a situation where we derail the IMF program. We cannot have a situation where we can't refinance our external debt. We have to push through lots of economic reforms. And I mean, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for the PTI, the PMLN has decided to take all the load on its own shoulders. So good luck to them. Let's hope they
Let
are
me
able
come
to
back
do
to you.
it. It's not going to be easy.
Right, Ji Javed Sahab, overall, as far as, of course, you saw what, you heard what Salman Shah is also saying as far as economy is concerned, and what Rana Ehsan. As far as economy is concerned, there seems to be this opinion, this joint opinion, that there is, overall the situation is quite bad. It was not great to begin with, and now it needs to have a kind of consensus. Of course, with that, pursuant to that, we've been talking, for a while now about an economic charter that sort of transcends all political affiliation, on which all political parties can then sit and work towards our economy getting more stable. We haven't been able to get there. As far as the PTI is concerned at this time, again, because of the vote of no confidence, we are seeing a lot of bad blood, the way that that Imran Khan is calling people on the streets. The stability doesn't seem to be very close in terms of the politics at this time, unless we see a firm government, unless we see an opposition that's sitting, that's going to play ball. And we've seen most of the PTI has resigned from the assemblies. So overall, how do you see the situation in the next couple of months as far as economy is concerned? Certainly, there is no doubt that it's going to be a difficult task.
Yeah, Marukh, I think two important, very important decisions which Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif will have to make. One, he will have to clarify the tenure his government is going to stay there, because they haven't stated whether they're going to stay in power for the rest of the tenure of the PTI government, or they're going to stay in power for the next couple of months, or 5-6 months, and then call the elections. First, and secondly, and most importantly, our government will have to go for the reconciliation with the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Imran Khan, because Imran Khan is a very clear and present danger to the political dispensation in Islamabad. He is going to be relentless. He is not going to stop at short of toppling the government in Islamabad by force of his political will and political demonstration and the support of the people on the basis of the narrative he has constructed as far as the conspiracy theory is concerned. Despite the fact so many clarifications have come forward, but still people are not willing to buy those clarifications. They strongly believe that his government was toppled, he was a victim, and so on and so forth. So I think the challenge lies...
this is a conversation that we were having earlier on with regard to, and I'm going to go to Rana Saab with this, as far as your reconciliation, the PTI's reconciliation with, other opposition parties, mainly PMLN, of course, was concerned. And this was, again, an argument for economic stability, that there should be that kind of working relationship between the government and the opposition. It didn't happen then. It certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen now, because we are seeing a lot of, the moment the government has gone, we are seeing a lot of cases that are being talked about as far as corruption is concerned, the Tosha Khana. Of course, your party has said that it will not, they only want to go, they're not going to start going for any revenge or anything like that. But certainly there seems to be this narrative that is going to, if you call it accountability, whatever you may call it, which is what the last government also said. So there doesn't seem to be any chance of that kind of a relationship existing at this time. Don't you think it's going to have its economic costs, Rana Saab?
Well, you see, that was the problem with Imran Khan Saab's government, that he wanted to go solo. He was taking a dictatorial path, and where there was no consensus between the opposition parties and even with their own coalition partners. That won't be our way forward. We would
Okay.
like to even include PTI in everything, be it economy, be it electoral reforms, be it other subjects. We would invite them. We would want
But
them
they've
to
left.
participate
But they've left the
because,
assemblies.
well, that subject is still, there is a question whether the deputy speaker could have taken the resigns or not, or it's going to be vetted by the new speaker of the assembly. So that is all still there is a question mark to it. But moving forward, our strategy is not going to be revenge. It's not going to be political victimization or political engineering via NAB or FIA. But it is the responsibility of the government, whichever it is, to see by the departments who look over accountability to make sure that corruption did not happen, and if it did happen, it has to work all across the board, be it the government or the opposition. So, but that won't be our focus. Our focus is the economy. Our focus is the common man. Our focus is inflation, and these are pretty heavy loaded subjects and quite tough road ahead on these fronts. So these are going to be the focus areas, and we will try our level best to take everyone along, because the problems we face are not going to get resolved. For example, again, I will have to repeat on the petrol thing. For example, the government today is giving 100 billion rupees subsidy per month. If you multiply that by 12, it amounts to 1,200 billion. That is bigger than the PSDP of the federal government. So obviously, this decision is unsustainable. It's impossible. It cannot carry on forward. So everyone has to take a load in that. Everyone has to realize that this was done politically, and if we start doing politics, God forbid, this country is going to head into a massive financial crisis. So our focus would be for a charter of economy. We would try to make certain things beyond politics, and they have to be de-linked with the politics of the country, and those decisions have to happen rationally, logically, and without any political interference. So that would be our focus, and we would try to head that road. Hopefully PTI will also join in this path of ours.
Let me come back to you. Salman sir, do you think that there's a possibility of that kind of dialogue in your experience? Do you see it happening? Because we are at this time seeing a lot of animosity. We are seeing a lot of, what can one call it, bad blood, aggression between the way the vote of no confidence happened, and even what we are seeing in Punjab at this time. Vis-a-vis the governor saying that he is not going to, he doesn't, the president doesn't have, the prime minister doesn't have the authority, and the president does, and the president has to dismiss him, and then all of that oath, whether he can administer oath to the new CM, Hamza Shahbaz, all of those things, it doesn't look like there's going to be a likely scenario where all political parties, the PTI included, are going to be able to sit together to talk about economy.
Yeah, I think there is no trust between the at least PTI and the other parties which are in the government now. But I think the most important thing is going to be the budget, and in the next 3 or 4 weeks, the budget proposals will be in place, and you will have to start building up a budget. And that budget, I think no political government will be able to really make a budget which would be in line with our economic situation. So this is going to be a very hot political hot potato for the alliance in power now. Are they going to put their stamp on the budget? And then if that budget is announced, that the next step of that is the IMF program. And will they be able to live with those conditions? So even if, let's say, the primary surplus is just 1% or so, it would mean an enormous cut in expenditures and an enormous increase in taxes. And for a political government to make this kind of a budget is going to be like committing harakari. So I hope we can generate some kind of consensus here and we are able to get a budget which meets the requirements at this point in time. And of course, it's going to be very harsh on the people. It's not going to be easy because, our structural problems are so grave, particularly in the energy sector, that you can't finance the circular debt at all. And the IMF is very clear on that, that they want the circular debt to start to come down. So when the prices of fossil fuel are so high and our energy sector is driven by fossil fuel, how we are going to manage the price conveys to the public is going to be a very difficult political decision which the government has to face. Unfortunately, the situation is such that there are no easy answers, and it will depend
you
upon
chose. Let me come back to you, Rana Sahab. You chose. I mean, your party chose, and the way the vote of no confidence happened, to come into power at this juncture in time, where of course, like Salman Sahab is saying, you're looking at the new budget in the face, also the repercussions of that, and on your vote bank, all of those things. So one expects that there is a plan, right?
Of course. I mean, I asked this question to Dar Saab that, it seems that we're actually saving PTI from this economic chaos. And the answer was that, no, we're saving Pakistan. We're trying to, intervene and take some tough decisions. And we feel that maybe if we would have let this government, the previous government, continue, things would have worsened off. And, if there was mismanagement over there as well, maybe things would have gotten to a point of no return. Look at Sri Lanka, what has happened there. So yes, I agree again with Salman Saab, but we have to realize that everything has worsened, be it your, the size of debts that you've taken, the current account deficit, which could reach 20 billion US dollars, your fiscal deficit. I mean, imagine our 5 years of government, we had a fiscal deficit of 7,000 billion rupees accumulated, 5 years. And just this year, we're seeing a fiscal deficit of 5,600 and plus 800 of your, supplementary grants to your public sector enterprises. So that's, that's the size of the chaos we're in. And I agree, it is no easy task. There have to be tough decisions taken. And I believe, it's my opinion that the IMF program has to continue. And we cannot, even when PTI was in government, that is what I have said in your talk shows before as well, that we need the IMF. Otherwise, borrowing from, the market is at the rates almost 15%, maybe even higher. That's not sustainable. That's not doable. So we need IMF. And but for IMF, there are quite a lot of tough conditions which have to be met. We'll be negotiating with them, but I think Pakistan needs to take certain tough decisions. We will be taking them for the sake of Pakistan, and we'll be, taking all of the Pakistanis, we'll be explaining to them what we're doing and why we have to do them, where we are standing today. And in this scenario, the narrative, sadly, which Imran Khan is building, that, the good versus the evil, and, the holy versus the unholy, is quite damaging. And I hope people of Pakistan realize that the type of polarization that we've reached today, that you're calling,
Rana Sahab, is there some concern, in terms of the crowds that are that the PTI Imran Khan is drawing at this time, and of course, like you are saying, in terms of how it can contribute to polarization in society, how it can lead to more extremism also, and the fact that it seems like the narrative of PTI, would you agree, might be catching?
You asking me?
You can play with the emotions of people. That is doable. You can play with the emotions of Pakistanis, and you can fire them up. But that is not good for Pakistanis. And how are we seeing them? The only way that you could judge a party's popularity is via elections. the number of people who come out, the size of your jalsas.
But Rana Sahab, that's what they seem to be saying. They're saying that, get instead of any other government coming in, move towards elections. Of course, that is their main contention, right?
But that is their contention. I mean, the country cannot move according to their contention. The country cannot move according to the will, the wishes of Imran Khan. There are, other stakeholders in this country as well. There is a constitution as well. So everyone has to be somehow on the same page to a certain extent to move forward. The country cannot, it is a country of 220 million people. It cannot move forward according to Imran Khan. So he has to realize that. And I am thinking that after a few weeks have passed and, once Ramzan is over, people will also start settling in when they realize that this is a done deal. This government is going to, move forward. So once that realization sets in, I suppose, this political narrative will also slow down. And also, like Shahbaz Saab has ordered an inquiry into it. And I suppose when those inquiries are going to conclude, people will, to a certain extent, get to know the reality of this narrative. But we have to realize that you cannot, the foreign policy of this country cannot be based on emotions. It cannot.
Rana Sahab, let me come back to you. Javed Sahab, do you agree? You think that once this government settles in, like Rana Sahab is saying, the cabinet is formed, it starts its, things settle down, so to speak. Then there will be, perhaps the saner narrative will prevail. Do you see that happening? Or, overall, of course, one has to see whether Imran Khan is also able to continue with this kind of momentum and for how long. Also, side by side, we'll have to see what the budget brings and the conditions it comes out with and the effect of that on the electorate also. So how do you see the situation in the next couple of months?
Marukh, I think the current government is probably missing two very important dimensions. One is the brinkmanship and demagoguery which former Prime Minister Imran Khan is displaying right now. And this populist juggernaut which is knocking at the door of Islamabad. The government, or there's just one person, the Prime Minister, they are being delusional by ignoring what is happening outside in the cities and towns of Pakistan, how the middle classes of Pakistan are responding, how the educated urban class is responding to the call of the Prime Minister. And secondly, as was mentioned by Dr. Salman, that the budget, I mean, if you go for the populist decision in the budget, you're damned. If you don't, you're damned. Because if your decisions are in sync with the economy in the budget, it is going to be a very unpopular budget. And if you go for the populist budget, it is going to further hurt the economy. So I think it is between the devil and the deep blue sea as far as the current dispensation is concerned. And most importantly, Marukh, I have seen as a political commentator that at the face of a very powerful narrative on part of the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, the current government in Islamabad is totally lacking the counter narrative. There is a deafening silence on part of the Prime Minister or his party or the coalition. They are engaged in politicking and they are engaged in distributing the ministries, while on the contrary, there is a very powerful narrative being built across the country. They don't understand what is happening there. They're totally cut off from reality. Only a week ago, they were in a position, right now they're in government, and they have come into a different mold. It seems that they are in power for the last 10 years. They need to understand the kind of a danger which the political instability is facing Pakistan right now. Let us come out of this sort of lackluster approach towards the issues being faced by the country. They need to form the cabinet as fast as they can, and then they go for the policies, the course correction, etc. Because, I mean, they do not have a luxury of the time at hand that they can go on and on and on, not forming a government and then expecting the miracles to happen. No miracle is going to happen in Pakistan unless there is a will and part of the rulers in Islamabad.
As far as FIA is concerned, when we see, the kind of course, the allegations that happen, the moment, this government goes, the other one comes in, has always happened. And the way that kind of, sort of like you are saying, takes away from the importance of what should be of concern at this time. Instead of proving corruption, which is what Rana Sahab is also talking about, what the reality of the situation was, whether who's honest, who's dishonest, all of that narrative is taking away from the fact that as far as economy is concerned, we are sinking deeper and deeper. Wouldn't you agree?
MARUKH economy has taken the back seat right now because politics is on the front seat. Politics seems to be driving the country right now. The political forces, as far as the government is concerned, there is a desperate grouping of about a dozen political parties which are going to form the government in Islamabad with different political ideologies, different thinking towards social issues, economic issues, and political issues. There is no unanimity of views as far as the different political groups are concerned. First of all, look at the religious parties, the left-leaning parties, and the right-leaning parties, and some of them are the middle-of-the-road political parties. So such a grouping in any given society or country is a biggest challenge for the Prime Minister to sort of take everybody on board and go for cohesive and overarching policies. So I think we need to understand or need to wait for the formation of the government, and then we will have to see the kind of initiatives which are going to come out of any political decision making in Islamabad. But I strongly believe that now the biggest challenge to the government is political, not the economic. Once they address the political challenge, I think they will be able to concentrate on the economy as well, and they might be able to find some ways as far as the economic issues are concerned, which are no doubt gigantic, as far as the common man is concerned.
Right, Rana sir, as far as Punjab is concerned, your quick comments, we're also running out of time. The uncertainty there is continuing. We are seeing, as far as the governor is saying, he's saying that, he hasn't been, it's not the authority of the president, the whole debate about that. What are you going to go to court on that? Is the PMLN plan to go to court tomorrow to get a direction from there? How do you plan to proceed now?
We're hoping that the president would not make any irrational decision based on politics. We're hoping that he would just do what he has been recommended to do.
Right. So there's no. Because he's categorically at this time refused. Right. He's saying that it is not the authority of the Prime Minister, and it has to come from the president. And that debate about what's in the constitution or not. The exploiting, or I don't know, the interpreting, what one can call it, of legal provisions, the constitution, what would you call it? Delaying tactic? What is it?
Well, it's just dirty politics, nothing else. That is what you've seen in the National Assembly. That is what you've seen in the Provincial Assembly, and one can only hope that sanity will prevail on their part.
Right, and as far as Hamza Shehbaz is concerned, he of course is the new chief minister in waiting. There will be, of course, a new cabinet there also. So I guess this time of uncertainty will prevail for a while, and one can expect decisions, bureaucratic decisions, all of those things. So I guess it will take some time for the kind of certainty one would like as far as economy is also concerned.
Well, from your forum, I would also recommend that I think I've heard that the cabinet is going to, the first part of the cabinet is going to be sworn in tomorrow. And all this political uncertainty is almost, heading towards conclusion. So we're hoping that once the cabinet is there, things will start improving and, we'll start taking Pakistan forward.
Right. Okay. Salman sir, your comments, we're also running out of time, but your comments as an economist, what do you think is the best way forward for the new government, considering the political scenario also at this time?
Well, I can't suggest anything to the government except that they'll have to make very difficult decisions, and I hope they are able to make them. Because as Rana Sahib has said, it's for the sake of Pakistan. We must get this economics right. And we don't have any more space to look at political considerations. They should try to get some kind of consensus on the budget and make sure that it is a budget which takes Pakistan out of problems which we are facing right now. Because if we end up in a default kind of a situation, then our economy will be pushed down so much that coming out of that hole is going to be very difficult.
Salman sir, overall, how long do you think, of course, in terms of, it has to be a sustainable kind of the measures, whatever this government takes. And one can't expect the situation to really dramatically change in a year, maybe even 2 years. So it has to be a long-term plan, regardless of whichever government comes in next, right?
No, I think right now we need a 2 months plan.
Okay.
I mean, thinking long term is really, I mean, that is for the next episode of the economy. Right now, in this episode, we are looking at what is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months. Where are we going to get the flows? How are we going to negotiate our loans? How are we going to roll them over? How are we going to refinance them? And is the IMF going to be standing with us or not? I think those are the main issues right now which we must tackle.
Right.
Otherwise, I think there is no long term. There's only
Right.
a immediate term, and we need to make sure that we get it right in the immediate term.
Inshallah, we will. Inshallah.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Salman Shah, Rana Ihsan Afzal Khan. Thank you for joining us. Javed Jadoon Saab, thank you for joining us. Right. It seems that as far as the economic considerations, there is, according to Salman Shah Saab, he says there doesn't seem to be a long term. There is only a very short term, and those measures need to be taken. They may be very difficult for the new government, but they need to be taken regardless of political considerations at this time. The main concern should be economy, because, you know, as far as, of course, the example of Sri Lanka, where we don't want to be headed there. And of course, one waits for the new cabinet to be sworn in, and one waits for the kind of decisions that, of course, need to be taken, of course, with the new budget also. Just a couple of months down the road, we will have to see how the new government chooses to tackle these very real economic problems. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.